Hey everybody, my name's Craig Monroe. I'm here with the winner of the open road contest, Frank Havemann. So Frank, thank you. Thank you for being here, Frank. It's wonderful to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, how are you feeling having won the contest?
Yeah, I'm surprised. It's a little bit unreal, isn't it? I mean, obviously, you enter a contest because you think, oh, this is a good story. You might as well go for it. But actually, I didn't really expect to win it. I knew it was a good story, but I didn't expect to win it. So it's a great feeling.
Yeah, how did you feel when you saw your name in the magazine?
So it was actually a bit of a surprise. I came back from a sort of evening ball from a school, kids celebrating leaving school, and my other half was waiting for me at home, grinning like a Cheshire cat, and I didn't really know what was going on. She's like, you won the contest. I did what? So that was lovely.
So they'd read it before and they checked it out.
She was hitting the refresh button, waiting for the magazine to come out.
Oh, and I had internet troubles. I was actually uploading it from my car on the highway. And we hit a dead zone right as I was hitting update, and then I was like, no, it's going 305. So sorry I've kept her waiting, but that's fantastic.
No, it was great, adding to the suspense.
Yeah. So yeah, $3,000 grand prize award for new writers. This is your second publication with us, if I'm correct. Is that
that's right? Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Have you published anywhere else as well, or is Elegant Literature kind of your first?
In terms of, yeah, so it depends on what you think about publishing. So yes, as a magazine, I would say yes. I've written a tiny piece of flash fiction for somebody's collecting flash fiction in a little collection, Christopher Field, and I've been on Medium and on Vocal, but they're really self-published. So that's not really, I wouldn't consider that published.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yeah. It's new. I've been sort of lurking in the background.
Submitting here. Have you been submitting to like your short fiction to magazines sort of for a while, or have you just
not really. It was I don't really know how it came about. It was a couple of years ago, so that people would occasionally say, oh, that's great, you should really like write more, like when you do little excerpts or character backstories or play Dungeons and Dragons with friends or something like that, right? And then we were doing a year abroad a little while ago, and I was trying to write and just didn't really have time. So I started a bunch of novels that I didn't finish, and I wrote some short stuff and didn't really push it anywhere, didn't publish it anywhere, didn't submit it anywhere. And then this February, both my other half and I sort of said, well, let's go back and forth a bit and write more and actually try and have it read. And so since then we've been sort of writing things, and to be honest, the prompts have just been amazing. I don't know, for me particularly, like constraints work really well. It's much easier to write a haiku than a novel, not just because it's shorter, but also because the constraints sort of fuel the creativity. Yeah. So having the prompts has just been awesome. You just see there's like, okay, there's a road and there's a glove, and then the story just comes.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. I have a lot of fun writing the prompts.
It just happens. Oh, well, I take
it broad, and I try and make them broad enough that no matter what genre you write in and what kind of story you want to write, like there's sort of something there that can trigger all sorts of different genres. So I'm really glad that
it's been great. It's just, you just read the prompt and you're like, oh yeah, and then this happens and it'd be cool, but what if?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, it's funny you say that you work better with constraints, because I think that most of us do. I've had some people reach out to me and say, why prompt? Can I just write whatever I want? But I remember reading a book a while ago. It was a nonfiction book. It's called Brain Steering, and the lesson that stuck with me was that if you were just asked to come up with something with no constraints, it's really hard to do. Just imagine 10 things. It's like that aren't just. It's hard to explain because I haven't read the book in a while, and I'm not the guys who wrote it. But they gave us you gave a little exercise to do where they said, go, imagine this with almost no structure at all, and it was really, really difficult. And they said, okay, here's an experiment where inside this little box, and you're just kind of coming up with ideas all over the place. So it's one of the reasons I really like trying to write the prompt and having it that way. What do you remember, just offhand, do you remember what it was about this prompt that kind of led you to this last contact story that you wrote?
I think it's probably the glove in the end. So I was just sort of thinking about road and traveling, and how you just find stuff on the side of the road. So I did a road trip ages ago in the States, out west, and it's mostly the weirdness, isn't it? When you're driving on this highway for hours and hours, and eventually you see just a random giant donut, and then there's a motel there or a store, and it's just, it's just that thing that's off the road, really, that captures your interest.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking about the glove and what that could be, and gloves are, I mean, they're super symbolic, aren't they?
Sure.
And it's just laying down your glove as a declaration of war, or wearing a glove, or to protect yourself, or for cleanliness, and just running with that. And it was coming back to this thought I had ages ago about archaeologists. Essentially, right? Anytime you don't know what's going on, it's a ceremonial object.
Yeah.
And at that point, sort of the whole thing was sort of starting to come together, of this archaeologist who's going, all right, like, discover, oh, what if somebody went around and discovered us? What would that be? And then, why does she have a glove? I don't know. What could she do with the glove? Well, the first instance, she's probably on an atmosphere she can't deal with. And then,
Yeah.
well, what happens if she takes it off? Could she take it off for a good reason? And then sort of just ran with it. And it's like, well, why just one hand? Like, is she doing this for the first time? Like, and what does it look like from her perspective? Read and watched a fair bit of sci-fi, and you see a lot of first contact, and it's
Yeah.
like, that's great, but what are they thinking when they arrive? And if you sort of think back at colonial history and all the misinterpretations and all that sort of all of the assumptions that are happening, I just figured, oh, that'd be a nice viewpoint to take there. So it just flowed. I mean, it's one of those things. The thing starts and you're thinking, oh, okay, she's an alien explorer and she's discovering us, and then the story just happened.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, that's what I thought really came across with it. And I really liked how you just sort of, you explain that. It's like the old, just keep asking, and what if this, what if that, sort of, to get down and down and down into the layers of their story and to really flesh out the idea. And listening to you talk about how you came up with that, it almost sounds logical. Like, it's just kind of flowing down the idea. And I really, really like the story that you came up with. And how all those elements fit together. I just happened to be going through a road trip in the States in the last week, actually.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, there's tons of, finding stuff on the side of the road, and seeing something kind of over there, like, oh, let's go check that out, and taking the turn off. So yeah, it works perfectly. I can see where that came from. I really liked do you normally write science fiction? Do you normally? Sorry, do you normally write science? Yeah, we're having a little bit of connection issues, I've noticed.
No worries. It's probably on my side. Yeah, so I'm drawn to sci-fi just because it's so open, right? So there's this whole, write what you know about, and I've always been slightly upset about it. But there's so much I don't know about, and that'd be much more interesting to write about. I know where that advice comes from. I get it, but sci-fi is sort of the easiest way to break that particular mantra. But yeah, I've been drawn to it just because there's so much there, so much to think about, and it's so much easier to I think it's so much easier to engage a reader, because you're not immediately taking up a position that they might, for whatever reason, find difficult for themselves. I think fantasy and sci-fi just allows you to tell a story and have people come to their own conclusions and make their own journey, as it were, without sort of setting it into a setting where you have to take a position right away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just yeah, there's a fantasy novel I've started, there's a thriller I've started. Right now the short fiction is working because the arc seems to be working, as in I can tell a story in that field. And the longer ones, I don't quite have the setup yet. I'm working on, it's like, how do I spin that over the length of a book?
There's certainly a lot more that has to go into it.
Yeah, so that's the sort of next steps. There's stories there to be told. They're not shorts, but they're not novels yet. And there's so much craft going on today. I feel like we live in this golden age, don't we, of TV and music and writing. You got your Naomi Novik and your Becky Chambers and your Brandon Sanderson. It's just the craft is just fantastic. It's just,
yeah.
amazing what's out there. And the same thing with TV and the stuff you can watch and the music that's being produced. And I have a lot of respect for that. And it's stuff that you have to just learn and practice and do, isn't it? Sort of. I think it took me a while to just get a handle on dialogue. And in this story, essentially, there isn't any, is there? But
No.
it's a different perspective. But that's hard, isn't it? English is my second language, so I'm always sort of, is that really how people talk?
English is your second language.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed just from speaking with you or reading any of the things that you've written.
It's a language I like a lot. I have been living in English, as it were, for 2 decades. But
What is
one
your
of those
first
things where you
language?
just don't have the confidence necessarily with the dialogue, isn't it?
Yeah. What's your first language?
I gotta hang on. Let me do something about this alarm that keeps telling me that we're having a meeting. So my first language is German originally, but
There's no hint. I can tell no hint of an accent in
it's been a bit of a journey for myself. So I did school English at school, as you would expect, and really fell in love with it. I think Douglas Adams in the end is to blame for me not living in countries.
Douglas Adams. He's some of the funniest.
There's this great. Oh, it's just. I think it's the first page somewhere where you're speaking about being drunk and then thinking about how it feels for a glass to be drunk, and it's just you can only do that in English.
Oh yeah. That's wouldn't really come across as well. Just the culture of England really sets that one.
Yeah, no, and that's it's absolutely brilliant. And so I moved to the States, lived there for a decade, did this and that in uni and work, and then I came over here to the UK, where I've been for 12, 13 years now. But it's just lovely. There's so much good stuff out there. But occasionally, you got to sort of take heart and say, by the way, these dots that you're seeing, there's sort of,
I was wondering.
some LEDs being projected. Is not bugs.
I thought it might be maybe sunlight or something coming off your watch. Just
Yeah, no, there's a little LED projector that makes a starry sky in here.
Oh, that's nice. It only comes on when you have the lights off, and you have really nice lighting before it too. So
yeah, it's nice.
Mhm.
Put some LEDs on the walls.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And it's lovely.
Yeah, and I understand. I understand.
No, it's good fun.
And I understand what you mean when saying short the craft out there is so good. Like novels, I've been having a hard time putting down novels. Like I'll read a 14 book series or something in like 2 months, and just they're so good. And with the transition of sort of storytelling from movies coming into sort of TV series and that longer form storytelling, really sort of drawing out the more minor details and really getting to understand the characters more than you do in the hour and a half of a movie versus the 10 to 12 hours to 24 hours of a TV series. I think we're really sort of moving towards, as a culture and as a sort of a entertainment media industry, moving towards really in-depth, really quality storytelling as much as possible. Like that's sort of the sense I get, especially from the mainstream, the TV and the movies and stuff. The novels, you can have anything you want depending on where you look, but where I look, I see just truly in-depth storytelling.
And it's interesting because you get sort of almost a visual language there.
Yeah. It's very good. So I want to go back to something you said way back at the very beginning. You said you and your other half were writing. Are they a writer as well?
Yeah, she is. In fact, she's been submitting things to Elegant as well, as it honorable mention. And I think we both love reading, and we both like writing and telling stories. It's quite fun because we have very different styles. Sci-fi is probably shared as an interest, but our writing styles and our stories are very different. But it's nice to sort of have an in-house alpha reader and editor.
That's pretty handy right there. And do you how do you find with both of you writing, if you have sort of different styles, how do you manage that when you read and edit each other's work? Do you ever run into trouble, kind of like, oh, I would say that this way instead of what you've done there, but it's not their style to do that? Do you ever run into anything like that?
Yeah, I think think so, but that's fine, isn't it? And basically the nice thing is we can talk about it. And you know, there'll be changes that Emma makes to my work where I will say, actually, no, I really want that this way. And there's other things where she says, like, you just can't say it like that. You have to switch. You have to switch those words around. It's like, okay.
Fantastic. And there was no jealousy or anything when you've won the contest here?
No. We're always happy for each other when we get published or do this or that. You know.
Fantastic. So I'm assuming she's also a new writer as
yeah.
in Telugu literature. Well, maybe her turn will be next. You'll be our first
same situation, unpublished in a sense.
Yeah, you'll be our first couple of winners.
Fantastic.
So I want to know a little bit more about you. I mean, you mentioned that so your German is your first language, but you've been in England for 20 years. You have a partner and children, you said, I think.
Yeah, I've got a little one. She's hopefully sleeping next door. Oh, very carefully listening in.
I see why you booked this meeting for 4 o'clock rather than my time and 9 o'clock your time. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly.
Grow up in Germany, or?
It did, yeah. It was which is actually, you know, in your commentary, you sort of mentioned the changing perspectives. I think that's sort of a thing I quite enjoy, a theme that sort of happened accidentally that I've sort of pursued. I was born in East Germany, when it was still East Germany, so before the war came down, and then lived in West Germany as well, and then lived in America, and lived in the UK. And every time you change perspectives, I think it sort of enriches you a little bit.
Yeah. I believe that fully. It's why I recommend to everybody that they should travel as much as possible to different cultures whenever they can, not just to resorts, you know, but to actually immerse themselves in other cultures. And it gives you such a big perspective on the world and tons of ammunition as a writer. So that's
exactly.
You got those experiences. What inspired you to write? Is there a specific book or event or anything like that?
Do you know what? That's a really tricky question. I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure I can pin it down. It's sort of, you know, you sort of have a creative streak. You just do stuff. You build this, or you play a bit of music, or you write a little bit. I don't think I've ever sort of thought of myself as a writer as a kid. I mean, I'd write little things as you do for school and so on and so forth, and enjoy it. And I enjoyed playing with language, but I didn't think of that as a sort of a medium I would be working in. I've always loved reading. You know, that's never gone away. I still read every evening and as much as I can. But I don't know. It must have been a few years ago, I suppose. Just the feeling just to start writing things and start a story. I might have been in NaNoWriMo or something, sort of novel writing once, and I said, I'll just try it out, and then it flowed, and it's like, oh, I think I could do this. And then sort of you oscillate a bit in your self-confidence, don't you?
Of course. It's like starting any new venture.
You read something where you say, I could do that. Yeah. You read a piece where you say, do you know what? Actually, I could do this. In fact, I could do this better. And then you read a bit of Ishiguro or something, you say, oh my God.
That's
I think I could ever do that.
No, exactly. I had the same experience with different subjects, actually, when I was trying to figure out what to do with my life back when I was more of a teenager and not doing so well in university. I was looking at ads everywhere in the subway and on billboards, and it's like, these are insulting how, you know, stupid the advertisers think I am. Like, I could write better ads than this. And then I saw an ad for advertising school, which actually worked. And I went to advertising school. And then I met one of my professors was the guy who would come up with, I don't know if you know it, if it was in England, but the Philadelphia cream cheese angel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he was the professor. It went back when he was an advertising executive. He came up with that campaign and ran it for years. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I can ever come up with something that good. Like, and fortunately for me, I ended up not pursuing advertising, and here we are today. But I know what you mean by kind of thinking you can do it, worrying about you can't, and obviously you can, or at least, you know.
It's been really nice to have people say this is a good story, because you don't really know. You think it's a good story. Sure. And obviously your friends and your family are always liable to say, this is great, you should write more, maybe you should write a book. And you're like, but is it actually good?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly think it is. I'm sure that there's many other people out there now who have read the magazine, read your story, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they believe it's good too. Since I mean, I can tell you it's a good story. Um, so have you mentioned that you were sort of working on novels on longer
Yeah.
lengths?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, wait,
So
before we go into that, before I
yeah.
remembered, have you been showing the story, the Last Contact, that's won this contest? Have you been showing it to sort of your friends and family? Has everybody read it now? It's made the rounds.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, I was saying, okay, you need to check this out. Go to Elegant. Here's the link. Yeah, read
Yeah.
the magazine. So that's been nice. Yeah, I've been sharing it
Yeah.
around.
And none of them are doing the opposite of what they would normally do. And so actually, I don't think this was much of a good story at all. None of them are saying that.
No, I mean, I have one or two as like, yeah, sci-fi is not really my genre, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, what can you do about that, really? Huh? Um,
fair enough.
yeah. And so, oh yeah, so I was I don't normally, I don't know if you know, because you've been reading the magazines for a little while now,
Yeah.
but I change where the contest winner story is placed in the magazine, so it's
Mhm.
never in the same place. So people don't just like kind of know right away just by glancing on it. There's no indication. You have to generally read. I want them to read through the magazine to find the
Yeah.
winner. Although I understand completely that if your name is on that list, you're probably going to jump straight to your story without reading the other ones. But for yours, I had to put it last because its name was Last Contact, and I felt like this just has
Yes,
to
fair
go
enough.
at. It's got to be the last story, right? Like Last Contact is the last contact somebody's going to have with the stories in this book. So that's
Yeah.
there it was. It was at the end, and I'm sure some people were like, "Oh, he says at the beginning that he puts them in a specific order and go read it naturally, and then he just puts the contest winner at the end." It had to go there this time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So are you're
Yeah, it
working
was
on?
just, I think, yeah, I think that,
Go ahead.
sorry, it was slowly connection was slow. Yeah, the title was just, it's sort of, I hadn't thought of one. It didn't really have one. I think it was called The Glove for a very long time. And then at the end, sort of, it's like, do you know what? Actually, that needs to be called Last Contact because
Yeah, I was.
actually that
It's
fits the story.
definitely does. It fits perfectly. It's one of those titles that kind of like you read it and you go, Last Contact, what does that mean? And kind of draws you in a little bit. And then as you're reading the story, you go, oh, I get it. I get why the title is. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I was reading it the first time I read it through, I was like, this is a really good story. This is really cool. I'm really enjoying this. And then I read it through a second time and said, oh, those are guns. Oh, those are the scientists, and those shiny medallions are our phones, and that golden crown is her hair. Like, how did I miss the first time I was looking? I was like, are these humans? And I was like, no, they're almost humans, but they're not. And and I just missed it because you layered it in well enough. You didn't just sort of. I liked the way that the things you chose to highlight from an alien perspective were so unfamiliar to the alien that even I miss them being a human reading through it the first time. But I mean, that's sometimes I read a story just totally for pleasure first, and I don't, I'm not thinking about it too hard. I'm just really enjoying watching. For me, I see it, the movies in my mind, right? And so for me, I'm just watching it happen. And reading it the second time, I went, wow, this is really, really cool how you've layered in all these human attributes that I missed. Like I was pretty sure they were humans. I just missed all the specific details that the reader actually has to think about and make the connection to. And I really like that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, no, it was one of those things, and you commented on that on the last paragraph, and I'm not sure if I should say stuff just in case people haven't actually read it. If you haven't read it, go and read it now.
Yeah. If you haven't read it, go pause right now. Go read it. Come back.
But it was actually one of those things that I added on. So I'd written the story without that last paragraph, and then I was sort of sitting on it for a little bit. Just sleep on it, read it again the next day, and see if it still makes sense. And then sort of two things came together. One was I was playing a D&D campaign with some friends. And they sort of they kept assuming that they were the sort of the most powerful beings, and I had to sort of carefully disabuse them of that notion. And independently, I was watching this YouTube video about why haven't we had contact from aliens? And there's this notion of this dark forest hypothesis out there, right? Where essentially, imagine we're in a dark forest that's full of scary things. Just keep your mouth shut. This is why we don't hear anything, because everybody's keeping their mouth shut because they don't want to get hunted.
Yeah.
And we might be the only ones silly enough to be raising our voice. And I was like, that's creepy. And then sort of it occurred to me, it's like, oh, what if? Hey, what if there's a reason they don't go off road?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Why is nobody going off?
Like they don't even
off those roads?
They don't even know, because they're, maybe it's generations back that this rigid hierarchy of tradition, follow the roads, don't go off the roads, was instilled in them, and now they've forgotten, and they're starting to explore and question that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what, as Douglas Adams said, space is a big place, right? It's like maybe there's just stuff they don't know about, and then you sort of insert this little notion of maybe there's other stuff out there, maybe there's, and that, so that I really enjoyed that. It's like, oh, I get to turn the whole thing 180 degrees at the end.
I thought that was brilliant, and I think that really made it elevated it to that next level of storytelling, where you didn't just leave it at, this is the story I'm telling. You left it open and you made it part of a larger world with a past and a future that are, we all assume that if you wrote a short story about, I went to the store to buy some milk and then I came home from the store, like, sure, there's a future and a past to that story, but it's not insinuated there on the page, and it's not kind of, the stakes aren't made so clear so quickly and in such short sentences. It was like a paragraph or two, right? And it was just kind of really, in my opinion, that really elevated the story up into sort of something that was more than just this short story. It was a piece of a larger world. And do you have any plans to expand that or delve deeper into that world of that society or anything?
I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot there, isn't there? There's this whole empire now, and there's a political strife there, and maybe, which is actually a nice segue sort of to the novels I haven't written but started, which is that I find it actually relatively easy to just spin out that first setup, that taste of the world, that intro, that opening scene, and so as a natural consequence, I have a good bunch of opening scenes sitting around. some lovely opening scenes for a thriller, and one sort of alternative past kind of reimagined thing, and a sci-fi thing where I figured, oh, let me rewrite a fairy tale, but it's all in space and it's cool. And so quite a bit of work to be done to sort of take those forward and make that work. But yeah, sort of, this is why I've started 4 things and finished none of them.
that is a very common problem, I'm sure. I know. How far along are you in your furthest projects?
Probably 20,000 words in or so. So a quarter of the way. But because I haven't really mapped out a storyline, I don't know how it ends. Especially for the sort of the mystery, the thriller kind of things. I start with a problem and some people and the characters, and then see what happens. And what happens has to sort of happen naturally, and every once in a while there can be a surprise, of course. But I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens at the end. I don't even know what happens in the middle.
Do you enjoy it that way? Is that, are you enjoying the
well, in this covering? This may be completely wrong-headed, but in my own logic, I'm sort of assuming, well, if I don't know what's going to happen, presumably the reader can't either.
I think that is almost word for word a Stephen King quote that I heard once.
It might well be. I've read his book on writing, so
that's probably where I've heard it as well. Is if you don't know where it's going, then the reader can't possibly guess, because it's absolutely, it's definitely not wrong-headed. I mean, writing a novel, writing a book is a personal journey, depending on how you want to do it. I mean, I advocate for new writers to write quickly and just get the story out and plan it out in advance, because I have an idea that the more you do that, the more you can increase your storytelling. But that doesn't mean that any other way isn't right. When you write for the process of discovery and finding out like where your characters take you and exploring all those different branches, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as you enjoy doing it. And I think that that's
Yeah.
sometimes some of the funnest things to do.
Yeah. I think there's a downside to it, at least for me, that I'm noticing, which is, that for me, writing right now is not what I'm doing full time. And so I think, if you've got that outline, if you've got that plot, it's probably a little bit more straightforward to say, well, today I'm writing this chapter, which I know roughly what happens and I just need to write it. And, the thing you have to do with writing is just keep writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you don't actually know what happens, then you're always a little bit dependent on that spark.
And you can get bogged.
And it's then probably a little bit harder to be disciplined about carrying that on. So yeah, maybe I'll try that out. Maybe I'll just say, do you know what, for this one, I'll just make myself an plot outline for the rest of this, and then see how that works. Because,
yeah, I mean, if you've never tried it, it can't hurt. It might work for you. And I mean, what I think about that sort of strategy is that if you use an outline, you plot it out and then you write it, and you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times, then you kind of understand how stories connect and flow on a much more sort of on a much more deeper level, because you've done it a couple times. And then when you sit down and sort of let it flow out of you and go through the process of discovery, then you're more likely to stay sort of on target and tell a tight story that's exciting and keeps you motivated, rather than letting your characters wander off and let the story sag, because you've already written 3 or 4 of them and have that sort of practice and that innate knowledge now of how a story goes. Which is why I advocate it, because there's
no, that makes sense to me. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm certainly willing to.
Yeah, I mean, some people struggle with it, for sure. Plotting, some people find that actually sort of trying to plot it out, depending on how much detail they go into, it actually takes the fun out of writing for them, and then they end up not writing it. So we want to stay away from that too. That's exciting. And so what you said you're not writing full time, and I mean, pretty much nobody I speak to from the elegant literature community is, because everybody is for new writers and aspiring authors. So I'd be very surprised if you wrote full time, basically. But is that what you'd like to do? Would you like to write full time? If you finished a book and somebody picked it up and it paid you for it, would you consider stopping what you do for a living now and transitioning over into like novelhood?
I don't know, maybe. I quite like what I'm doing. So I'm a teacher and I actually like teaching, so that's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really rewarding in its own way. I think I would probably miss quite a lot of that contact. And
what do you teach?
There's a lot of I teach maths and computer science and whatever else needs teaching on the day if in doubt.
What level?
So here in the UK, it's A level, but it's a secondary, so it's, I guess, high school, high school and AP. Yeah. And yeah, no, I greatly enjoy it. It's great fun, and it keeps you on your toes. And essentially, you're on stage, you're doing stand up 5 hours a day, but that's good. It keeps you sharp, and I get to play with math.
It must get easier as you get more comfortable with it.
Some of it. I mean, it's the teaching the maths. I don't think really are any of the issue. It's always it's interesting because you're working with people, and there are always new people and new combinations of people, and you want to do right by them. So
I know what you mean, because I've just I don't know if you saw the emails or whatever, but I just launched a new course for novel writing, and we've got I've been coaching people for the last few months. So actually I really found that teaching is very rewarding. I absolutely relate with that. I've been getting a real, more of a passion for it, and I get a really enjoyment, sense of fulfillment out of it. And now all of a sudden I'm going to have more of a class structure rather than one-on-one. So that's very exciting and a little nerve-wracking, because now you're a bit more on stand-up. At least, with mine, I can, it's not, I don't have to have a lesson for a whole semester or anything like that. Yeah, very exciting. So you would continue teaching, but write novels on the side if you could, basically?
Yeah, or there's always how you allocate your time. You could you could teach part-time and write part-time, or both. I'm open to it, right? There's a measure of me trying not to sort of get too big in my boots in terms of this. It's great. It's lovely to win the contest. It helps. You know, I have a couple of people I need to talk to. I think my next step is really actually finishing some books.
Yeah, definitely.
And then having people have a look, and if it takes off, if it's a thing that can support you, then yeah, you need to think about it. If you've got stories to tell, you should tell your stories. And if it's a thing where it has some success but it doesn't pay the bills, then you need to make that compromise. I don't find that particularly painful, to be honest. You know, I'm not looking for a way out, really. I have some stories to tell, and you know, right now the trade-off is heavily in terms of jobs that I've got some evening hours. I've got one day per 2 weeks that I can do with writing, holidays and so on. But
got to juggle.
I wouldn't mind shifting it a bit. Yeah, exactly.
Juggle with having. How old's your child, by the way?
She's 7. Yeah.
7. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you know, you can't spend all day at work and then all night at another job. Exactly.
No, but you know, she's a good kid, and you know, it's not like she wouldn't let me go write a bit. I mean, she loves reading herself. And so
sure, yeah. Well, 2 parents that read usually makes a child that reads, I think. And then bedtime's only getting later and later. I remember when I was.
It's a house full of books.
Yeah, I remember when I was probably a little bit older than 7. I think maybe probably closer to 10, 11, or 12 or something like that. I was a reader as well, and my house had a very open structure to it. So my room had sort of doorways, but no doors on it, and skylight kind of things. And basically, if there was a light on in my room, my parents could see the glow of it from the other end of the house. And so I would do things like put a tissue box over top of the lampshade and like pile stuff around it to try and get myself this one beam of light to read my books. So prepare yourself for your daughter staying up very late if she's a reader. It can happen.
I'm pretty sure I could hear her turn the pages. It's one of those things which we have not cracked down on, because I mean, she does need to sleep, but also reading is good.
Yeah. How do you make some of those choices?
Yeah. If it gets too late, I need to have a look.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, how do you go about sort of coming up with?
No, it's nice, but
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, you cut out. I thought it's hard sometimes when we have a little bit of lag being so far away from each other, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm not really worried about it. I think, you know, I'd like to spend more time writing, but yeah, I'm happy to take it as it comes, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. I'm wondering, how do you normally come up with your ideas? I mean, you walked me through a little bit of Last Contact, and that was kind of stemmed from the prompt and helped you run down the rabbit hole to come up with the story. But
yeah,
are you normally seeking out prompts to help you generate your ideas, or you got 4 projects on the go? Where are you getting the ideas from?
I only have them on the go. I keep discipline and write on them. It's a hard question. It's actually quite funny you asking this, because I just saw a lovely little clip of Neil Gaiman being asked that question on a podium, saying this is the one question you mustn't ask all authors, and telling a lovely story about fairies and so on. So the idea fairies that I keep in the basement and so on. I think prompts are great. I think they have really helped, particularly this year, sort of keep coming up with the next thing and keep coming up with the next thing. I don't know, they're just happening a bit, isn't it? If you sit around somewhere, or actually mostly if you go for a nice walk, thoughts will come into your head. If you take a long shower, you do some exercise, thoughts will happen in your head.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're mulling a particular prompt or situation or scenario or world, it just, you know, they sort of arrive unbidden. It does often start with a what if, doesn't it? So, you know, what if, I don't know, what if somebody accidentally did an assassination, right? And then what's the fallout? Or you know, there's a sort of a young adult kind of novel I'm thinking of. You know, it occurred to me that people can run quite far. A couple of my friends are long distance runners. I'm not, but they'll do like 100-kilometer race or something, 24
Okay.
hours. That's a long way. And then you say,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, or anatomy, and you see all this anthropology and anatomy, and you're like, yeah, we'll build for running, on the sort of edge of the forest and so on. And you think it's like, well, and then you read human history, and it's like, okay, the world's been populated in this way, and it took 20,000 years from people to go from the east of Africa to Oceania. It's like, well, what if it didn't? What if they ran there in like a year? That would be a cool story. And so that's one of the novels I'm writing. It's like, but why would they? Okay.
Yeah.
Why would they do that? It's like, what if they weren't the first? What if that happened regularly? Because again, right, it's like you wouldn't find any. There's no reason you wouldn't find anything in the archaeological record about this. I mean, how would you? You would find that people used common tools throughout the place. Like, well, yeah, that's what you do find, but you don't know why. So I don't know. Sort of, this sort of an idea that popped into my head. It's like, could you tell sort of a classic grim fairy tale, but on a space station?
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, without people noticing which fairy tale it is.
Yeah.
And have it be fun. And
I
then
think
what happens next, though?
Yeah.
What happens after that bit where the fairy tale ends, but the person is there and
yeah, you've still got more story to tell. You just don't have the original work to pull from anymore.
So suddenly you've got two characters, and two characters who can't stay on that station, and then you've got a story to tell. So I don't know. They just sort of happen. Mm-hmm. It's a short answer.
That's perfectly fine. That's a perfectly fine answer. And I'm looking forward. I want you to finish these books, though. Some of these sound pretty fun.
Yeah, me too. I want to find out what happens.
Yeah, right. You don't even know. Well, I'm rooting for you with that. Speaking of the characters, two people get stuck on a ship, or they can't stay there. How do you come up with the characters? Is it just that one might have been mostly pulled from fairy tales, but do you base them on real people? Are you using your D&D sort of character sheets to make how do you go about it?
Not really. I don't. It's a good question. I'm trying to see if I've got a good answer for it. I feel like they sort of exist. You think of a person, it's just in the broadest strokes, and then you watch them react to events, and you're like, okay, they're those sort of person. I wonder why. And you think a little bit about where they came from and what their story is, what's their life story that you don't tell in that novel, not necessarily. But why they're doing what they're doing, and why they're making the choices right now in this crisis that this book starts with. Mm-hmm. And then who else is there, and how are they in conflict sort of with each other, or not? That's sort of that's the way to hire. And there's an argument we're having between us writers at home about how much exposition and how much detail to give. And I'm so quite thankful for the short story format, where you have to be quite economical, mm-hmm. Which suits me just fine. Where I just sort of hint at things in the outlines, and let you fill in the rest. And when that works, it's wonderful. And then there's other stories where I've written the first chapter of a fantasy thing with people and dragons and magic, and somebody said, why is that tree? Is that tree medium or tall or small? I made some allusion to the dragon being the size of a small tree. Well, how small is that? I imagined it was going to be this small, but then later on you're saying it's eating a whole sheep, and I thought it was going to be much smaller than that. And it's like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And you're getting this feedback, and it's like, okay, maybe I'm not saying enough here. Maybe I'm not painting this picture clearly. And so that's a battle I have with myself regularly. And that goes for the characters as well. So they exist in my mind, nearly fully formed kind of by the time the story kicks off. I don't really know where they come from. I wouldn't say they're based on real people, mm-hmm. Not specific real people. I mean, I guess they are people in some sense. It's almost visual. You just sort of see them, the whole thing, going back to this idea of that common language we're getting from sort of this golden age of television. They almost exist, and like I could probably cast them quite well.
Okay.
I could give you some casting suggestions for them, and that, you know, I can see the scene, and then I describe it, because, you know, I'm writing a book, and this is me seeing it in my head doesn't really help anybody, but
You're right that, yeah, you got to translate that to the page and
yeah,
get it
and
across.
occasionally I don't write enough of that down because I can see it clearly.
Yeah. It's, I think it reminds me of another thing that Stephen King talked about in his book on writing. I'm pretty sure it was that one where he talked about you can say there's a rabbit, and the reader, you know, even ages later, I don't know if this was Stephen King in that book, but you can talk about a rabbit, and your reader, it's almost like a sense of a bit of time travel, a bit of like telepathic, you know, thought communication, because you write down, and they said it in the book, like, I write down, like, picture this, visualize a rabbit, and like, now I have implanted that idea in your mind across time, and, you know, but it's still, my skill as a writer will get you as close to visualizing the rabbit that I see first, because if I just say a rabbit, what do you picture? Are you picturing a bunny, a rabbit, a hare, brown, white, mottled? You know, it depends on, if I just say a rabbit, you see whatever you see, and their thoughts might be disparate, but the more that I describe it, the more you see what I see. And I always thought that was just kind of, whoa. Like,
yeah, and you get this, right, when you're watching a movie and you've read the book before and you kind of disagree suddenly.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
wait,
absolutely.
that's not how I remember it.
No, pretty sure you pronounce it
worse, when you do both
Hermione.
Yeah, I remember. In fact, I think I probably read and watched Game of Thrones at the same time, and it all melded in my brain. It was terribly confusing. I would pick up the book and it's like, wait, no, this hasn't happened. Wait, has this happened?
That is not the way to go about reading that series.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, even just if so, yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's very, very interesting, that kind of stuff. I absolutely love it. So there was something else I wanted to ask you about. You have, this is the second story that we published of yours. The first one being, I believe it's called, I have it right here. No, that's the wrong one. One of Those Days, that's what it's called. And that was for our Tricky Time issue.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. So I talk quite frequently about how, or at least in a lot of my advice, if you've read the short stories checklist that I put out, and some of the other things where I recommend to writers sort of how to go about structuring your story for best chances of selection, one of those things that I say is tell a linear story, because typically that's what we publish. Now, this was the opposite of that. This was, well, I mean, it's sort of a linear story if you read it from the bottom to the top, which isn't what we do. And I mean, even so, it came to great effect. Like, I was just like, what is going on here for the longest time? But that, in that sense, it was linearly revealed, like the information was revealed to me, and that the story was revealed as the text went on. And I thought that was just, it was a really good example of something done this way. And I really liked it quite a lot. And I wanted to know where'd that come from? Like both where did the story come from, and how and why did you choose that structure for it? You know, is there any, tell me all about it.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing was, it was, you know, I read the prompt and I was thinking, oh, timey-wimey. And so, you know, and it's actually really hard to do, isn't it? Because telling any kind of time travel and time bending stories is really hard, because most of the time they don't make sense, because they don't make sense.
Yeah.
And I figured, okay. And I'd probably been reading exactly these kind of things, some sort of live blogged events, and they are listed like that. And you know, I'm sure I found myself scrolling through some sort of current events thing, you know, in reverse order. And it keeps referring back to something that's happened, using language that you don't know what it's all about. And I thought, actually, that would be quite fun, in a sense that all of this has already happened, and we're going back to what's actually happened here, and sort of actually let's make it a little bit about time by going this way. and the bit of the coin, I mean, the coin was part of the prompt, and I figured actually that really lends itself. And I just spun a coin on the table and was like, ooh, but what if it was bigger? It was like, what if it were really big? And then, I mean, it would have to be Egypt, wouldn't it? It'd have to be arriving at the pyramids, because that's where people would expect it to arrive. I mean, that's where you would send it if we were sending some sort of time.
I was going to send a giant
And then,
spinning coin to Earth. I'd send it to the pyramids for sure.
yeah, and then I remembered that I don't understand gyroscopic effects, because they're weird, aren't they? You spin something in space and it keeps its orientation, and it's like, okay, but what if it keeps its orientation, messes with everything else? And then and then just the rest sort of just happened as a, you know, I don't know, the voice of that reporter just sort of happened naturally, and it's like, oh, let me put as many Easter eggs in there as I can, with, you know, let me come up with some really nice, fun Twitter handles and little story snippets. And how would people react? How would they react in Egypt? How would they react in the world? Who would get in on this? The crypto bros would get in on this. Yeah, and sort of the rest just happened. And I kind of wrote it from both ends. I originally wrote it linearly from the beginning, and then I said, no, wait a minute, I got to write this from the end, and I sort of met in the middle.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great fun writing. And it was like, but boom. So the problem was, as soon as I'd written it, I of course knew what the story was, and then I had no way to figure out if anybody reading this
would make any sense at all.
Would be able to make any sense of it whatsoever.
Because by that point, you're not looking at characters and dialogue and exposition or anything like that. You're looking at just a wall of text that might make no sense whatsoever if you don't have the whole thing in your mind. So what happened? Did you give it somebody on the first pass? They said, what? Or did your wife go, this is brilliant?
Yeah, it was great fun. It was just playing with it, and then, you know, just playing with the structure. What can I make of it in the constraints, in the, you know, in the space I have. That was good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly thought a lot of it made me laugh, and also I was kind of just like, I couldn't put it down because I needed to know what was going on. So you did a good job with that, and what I really liked.
What's going on? Yes.
Yeah, and I'm glad. yeah, still not entirely sure exactly, but figured some stuff out. Kind of. So it was really interesting to hear you speak about it. You know, I've covered a lot of the things that I typically like to ask people here, because, you know, I didn't have to actually directly ask it. Things came out naturally in conversation. How do you go about plotting and choosing, you know, your ideas and stuff, your career? What I normally ask around this point, kind of what you anticipate your career being, where you'd like to be in a year or in 5 years. But it sounds like, you know, you just want to be getting those novels put out and see where life takes you with the writing. Am I right with that?
Yeah, I think that'd be fair. I mean, I think for some of them, you know, it's a bit unfair, isn't it? Some of them are almost like, they're my practice novels. I have this idea of this multi-book series, post-apocalyptic, really cool thing with characters all over the planet, interwoven, meeting at the end, kind of thing. And I don't want to write that until I can write.
Yeah.
And that's slightly unfair, possibly, because it's also a good way to you know, protect that particular set of ideas by not writing it. But yeah, so some of these, but they're nice characters. So, you know, that little thriller that I'm sort of 19,000 words in, I just gotta write it. I want to know what happens. I think it's decent. I think it's funny, and that's nice, you know. And you know, I think I found some voices for some characters. I found some fun characters, you know, I'm at the point now where I'm saying, is it enough characters? There's 3 characters in there. Is that enough viewpoints? Do I need to have more characters? And you know, read some novel and you're like, wait, there's only one character. Well, there's one viewpoint, but lots of characters. And so, yeah, I just write it, see where it goes, see who wants to pick it up. You know, I think, yeah, this is what you get when you go to uni in the US. if you go to university in the US, you might come away with a slightly inflated sense of I can do anything. Certainly, they told us all the time from commencement to graduation that we were the future and could do anything.
Yeah.
And some of it must have rubbed up because I've got this notion of no, I can write, I can do this. Like somebody will pick up this book and publish it, and people will read it.
I mean, it happens. It definitely happens, but I think
I know the stats.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm sort of,
well, what I think with that kind of stuff is like,
I know the likelihood. This is why I'm caveating this a little bit, but
yeah, I understand completely with the having having that series that you want to write, but you want to wait till you're good enough, because if you start writing it and your first book is basically garbage, there's no way that you're going to kind of make it through that series in any meaningful way. Because also, if you think about it in terms of a publishing perspective, it's like your first book is bringing in new readers, and the second one, and nothing except the first book in a series ever brings in new readers. The second one brings the readers from your first one down to the second book, but does not bring in any new readers, because that's the first book's job. So if your first book isn't bringing in enough people, then and there's a statistic about how many people drop off every book, and it's actually quite a lot. So you really want to write a lot of first books to bring in new fans and add to the thing. And I also think that if you have a lot of stories inside of you that you want to tell, and you think that you're going to be writing for the rest of your life, regardless of whether you do it as a day job or you do it on the side in addition to having a family and having your career teaching, if your plan is to still write as many stories as possible, your plan you should expect to look back on your first couple stories and cringe, and like they're going to be so bad that your goal should be to write so many books that you can't even look at your first stories without hating yourself, because that means that you've successfully written so many stories, right? And so that by that logic, nobody should put too much stock on their first book or too much emphasis or worry about getting it just right, because the goal is to hate that later. So it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah.
That's sort of my philosophy on the thing.
Yeah, the only flip side to that is probably like how much are you judged on your first book, right? If you're putting this out to your publisher and they're saying, is this an author we want to sort of keep working with for them or for other publishers, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think this is where the short story stuff helps, isn't it? This is when you can point to things that have been published and actual writing, actual things, rather than here's this idea for a book I have.
Yeah, that only works with nonfiction.
And of course, right, coming back to exactly, and then coming back to my home advantage, where I've sort of got an in-house editor of high quality and
yeah, definitely.
That helps, isn't it? Because the sort of the first draft that I hope to eventually send in isn't going to be raw, right? It's not going to be a first draft. It's going to be a edited second, third kind of.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And that's nice. So I just got to get on and write it. To be honest,
You got to get in that chair and get it written.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, summer holidays coming up, so there should be a bit of writing time there.
Yeah, fantastic. And is teaching your only job? Do you have the whole sort of summer months off to do with what you will?
There's sort of 6 weeks in the summer, and a lot of it is family time, as it should be. And there's a bit of work. There's always work. But yeah, there's time. And then a bit of music on the side. But
yeah, definitely. What kind of music do you do?
It'll fit. It'll be fine. I don't think I can write for hours and hours a day. I play in some bands, keys and guitar and things. But,
right on.
It's just fun. It's just fun.
Very all around creative.
It's just I don't know. It's just, isn't it? Who doesn't like music? And if you're lucky and you got the chance to sort of learn a bit while you were a kid, then why not make some?
Yeah, absolutely. That I only wish that I could. I was not lucky enough to learn some as a child. My brother was the musical one, and he plays tons of instruments, like 6 or 7 of them. He can pick something up and just start jamming out. And I don't understand what's going on at all. Wish I could play. I plan on learning someday. Like I don't believe that there's any skill that you're too old to learn.
No, I don't think so either.
Like language, it can be a bit more difficult as an adult to pick up than when you were a kid. But I fully intend to, one day have enough time to learn an instrument.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely true. I think there's no reason not to. And it's just fun, isn't it? It's just playing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have anything else to ask you. I did want to, well, I do want to ask, you know, having won an award for new writers now and a fairly significant monetary prize, not that you're, you know, I mean, technically, yeah, you're a professional author now, in my opinion, in my books. I'd call you a pro because you've gotten stuff published, you've won an award. There you go. You might not feel that you're in a place to give advice to new writers, but is there anything that you'd want to share to other people watching this, somebody hoping to kind of get into writing, and anything you'd want to say to them?
I mean, I think just write, isn't it? It's not, you don't have to sort of wait for approval. That just write. If you think there's a story there, write the story. Read lots, write lots. Definitely not the first person to say that, but I think that's all there is to it, isn't it? And share it, and we keep reading.
Yeah, exactly. It's good advice. If something's good advice, many people can say it. That's you said to all. That's fantastic. Thank you, and thank you for coming and speaking with me. Thank you for submitting a story to Elegant Literature, 2 stories, and one so good that it won the contest. Congratulations on winning the $3,000 award. Hope you're feeling pretty good still.
Thank you. That's brilliant. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. So that will be I guess that'll be the end of our time today. So thank you for coming in, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Bye now.